Welcome to today's true crime story, where today we're going to go over a case about a serial killer that was just recently caught over in Kenya. But the thing about this story is there's so many controversy because the people of Kenya do not believe the person the police have arrested was involved in this case in the first place. And they honestly believe that it's actually a police cover-up. So if you're a true crime fan, go ahead and sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the story. Today's story takes place in Nairobi, Kenya, which is the home of the nature reserve that is used for breeding black rhinos. Nairobi is also the starting point for most safari trips. So on July 14th of 2024, during the European Championship football game, or soccer for some, a man was at a club just enjoying the game and having a few drinks. And around 3 a.m. he decided to leave once the game was over with. So while leaving the club, he noticed a few things that were a little bit off, but him being a little faded, he decided to just ignore it. Now as he was walking the road, getting ready to head home, that's when several police cars pulled up next to him. All the police officers hopped out of the car, grabbed him, handcuffed him, and threw him in the back of the vehicle and drove off. Now, most people who witnessed this just thought it was just a normal Tuesday because something like this happens all the time in Kenya. But all that would change during a news conference held by the police inspector general, who had announced they had just caught a serial killer. And the person they say was responsible for this was 33-year-old Collins Jumasi, because the inspector general would go on to say that this man had confessed to unaliving 42 women. Collins had allegedly confessed to unaliving his wife back in 2022, and his most recent victim was back in July 11th of 2024. Collins had allegedly confessed to strangling all of his victims before dismembering their bodies and dumping them in a quarry that the locals would use to dispose of their trash. The reason how the police had caught wind of the murders was because a woman had paid some locals to go into the quarry in search of her lost sister, who was Josephine Owina, who went missing back in June 26th of 2024. Now, while the locals were going around searching the quarry looking for her lost sister, they came across a sack that they found in which one of them had opened it and found one of the bodies in. When they saw what was inside the sack, they would go ahead and alert police. Now, once police had arrived, they would go ahead and comb the area, where they found 9 more sacks, in which all the bodies that was inside those sacks were women aging from 18 to 30. And one thing they noticed, they was all unalived the exact same way. But it is still unclear if Josephine was among one of them. One of the victims they was able to identify was Rosalind Agongo, who was identified by her family members based on the handbag she was carrying the day she disappeared. And the second victim who was identified, even though I might butcher this name, was Imelda Cariña. It was reason to believe she was the suspect's first wife, and where she was identified based on an ID card that was found in his house. Now, the reason why Collins became a suspect was because doing a forensic analysis of a mobile phone that allegedly belonged to one of the victims, there was a money transaction that was sent to Collins the same day she went missing. And during a search of Collins' home, they found 24 SIM card holders, 8 cell phones, 1 machete, 12 nylon sacks, 6 ID cards belonging to men, and 2 ID cards that belonged to 2 of the alleged victims. So during the news conference, the police would dub him as a psychopathic serial killer. So now I'm gonna stop the story for a second just to talk about psychopaths for a second. Now, many people believe that psychopaths are egocentric, lack empathy, crave immediate gratification, they are impervious to punishment, tend to have poor performance in academic and employment, but they can also be cunning, conning, and use intimidation to get what they want from people, and can have a complete lack of remorse or compassion. There are many psychopaths that are highly intelligent. They have reached position of power and success through virtue of a combination of both ruthlessness and cunning. And in this research of this story, I have found that there are 5 career paths that psychopaths tend to thrive in which number 1 are CEOs, number 2 are lawyers, number 3 are salespersons, number 4 are surgeons, and number 5 are police officers. Now, this case I brought in a new focus on the unaliving of women in Kenya. In Kenya and in many other countries, femicide is a big concern. If you don't know what femicide is, I have brought this up in the previous video, in which femicide is the unaliving of a woman or girl based on her gender, which means you are using violence against them because they're a woman or a girl. Because in January of 2024, hundreds of women had protested after 2 women were unalived just days within each other. Because on January 3rd, the first victim, who was an Instagram influencer, was found unalive in an Airbnb. The CCTV footage would show the influencer walking with a man that she allegedly met online walking back to the Airbnb. And the next morning, the same footage would show the man leaving the premises with stains all over his clothes and a possible leg injury. The influencer was found unalive in the Airbnb with stab wounds and bite marks all over her body. Police would find an HIV test kit along with a knife. A serial offender was arrested shortly after, in which several women had stepped forward and accused the same person of previous assaults. And 2 weeks after the first victim was found, a second victim came up where she was a 20-year-old fourth-year agricultural student at the Nairobi Agricultural University. She was found in a bag that was dumped in a trash collection point in the central business district. Now in Kenya, femicide is on the rise where over 500 women were found unalive between 2017 and 2024. Now here's where the controversy steps in. Now even though Collins is in detention, many locals have questioned how the police had caught him so fast, because there are many cases of women being unalive that has still not been resolved. Many would believe that the bodies that were found at the quarry were the bodies of demonstrators that have disappeared during the crackdown by police. Because during the protest in June 24th of 2024, police had unalived 40 people that was at that protest, in which a large number of them are still missing. One protester would say that he was seized and taken to an unknown location where he was beaten by officers. Now, an investigation was launched on the allegation on the dismembered bodies, and it seems there was a possible link between them and police. The reason why the investigation was launched because some of the bodies had signs of mutilation and torture. Collins is currently being held in detention, but his lawyer is working on trying to get his confession thrown out because he feels that his confession was false. It was reason to believe that Collins was tortured and SA'd by officers to get the confession out of him. And his lawyer is saying that he is confessing under duress. Now, it is alleged to believe that there are actually 2 more suspects in this case as well. Now, the first suspect was arrested for allegedly having a phone that belonged to one of the victims. And upon his arrest, he would take police to another man who sold him the phone. Now, upon finding the second suspect, he had over 154 cell phones on him, in which he had told police that he had bought those phones from Collins. As of right now, this case is still ongoing where there is no court date set for Collins because he is still under investigation to ensure that he is actually the right man, as well as to ensure that the police weren't involved in any way possible. So that concludes our story for today. So what do you think? Do you feel that Collins is the primary suspect in this case? Or do you feel that police had a more active role in what happened? Go ahead and leave your comments down below. And if you like more true crime stories like this, stay tuned for more stories to come.